I know this thing is on, and I know that you can hear me. Nursing and healthcare needs advocates and activism. So what are you waiting for? Let's do the damn thing. Welcome, Lisa and Tilda, to the show. Thank you so much for joining me on the Greeners podcast. I know it's been a little bit of a wild ride getting everybody connected, but we're all here in the same space, and I think this is going to be such an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much for having us. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, well, maybe before we get started, I know Tilda was on a couple weeks ago. So maybe I'll start with you first, Lisa. Maybe tell us a little bit about your background. What made you get into nursing? And yeah, maybe we'll just start there first.
I think it's a great question. So my name's Lisa. I am a proud registered nurse of 5 years. I have a very untraditional story and entry into nursing. I think a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my students throughout nursing school came from generations of nurses and healthcare providers. And for myself, I was the lost 16-year-old that knew she loved helping people, knew she loved talking and teaching and science. And all of a sudden, I read Tilda's book, A Nurse's Story. And I had this light bulb moment of this is what I meant to do. And this is who I want to be when I grow up. And it just became even more solidified when I went to Brock University for my undergrad. Then I get selected to represent my university at a national nursing conference. And who's the keynote speaker? Tilda. And it
Oh,
was
no
just
way.
moment of having this fangirl crush of reading all of her books throughout high school and university, and all of a sudden meeting this hero of yours that you've wrote letters and emails to, and now all of a sudden you're meeting her, and then you become friends with her, and now one of the most cherished relationships I have in my life is to have not only this caring adult, but a mentor and a true friend to help guide me into what makes a wonderful nurse.
Actually didn't see that coming because I was going to ask. My follow-up question was to say, like, tell us how you met. And now it's like, wow, that's really neat. And I guess what I'd probably say is, there's that saying that says never meet your heroes. I bet you it wasn't like that.
Yes, I was so fortunate, and it was such a God moment that I never expected to have happened. And what created was this beautiful speech we listened to from Tilda that was so inspiring, getting to do the meet and greet with her. And then the next day, I was like, she's sitting on her own at a breakfast table. I'm going to sit next to her. And it was just having those moments of courage to go outside my comfort box and bubble to introduce myself, network, have some meaningful conversations, ask really good questions about why and how and what. And I think it really formed this initial foundation that later on set Tilda and I up on this beautiful journey. So yeah, it's my biggest advice to everyone is never be afraid to ask and put yourself out there and find those heroes in the room.
Oh my goodness, that's so amazing. And Tilda, I don't want to make any assumptions to any of my listeners. I think you should also, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I've been a nurse for 40 years, 40. Well, I've been a nurse forever, really, I think, ever. And then 40 years, I recently retired. It's hard to say that R word. I wish I was still in it. I find little jobs, little gigs here and there that I still keep me in it. I continue to write about it. But the process of beginning to retire was what got me thinking, what can I do to leave, and to leave in such a way that I can pass on some of the gems, some of the jokes, the funny parts, all the stories, all the, with my wisdom, my experience. And then here's Lisa, so receptive, so interested in what I had to say. And to be fair, there were a few others. Lisa's not the only one. She's the main one in our new book, The Handover. But others as well took different things from our interactions. And so I found that passing it forward, handing over, just as we do at the end of a shift, want to make sure that the next oncoming nurse has everything they need to take care of the patient. And in our case, our patient was our profession. And I wanted to, I just it was a perfect arrangement to meet Lisa. Everything just fell into place. You know how that can happen sometimes. But as Lisa said, it's asking for what you want.
Yeah, no, that's it's just one of those stories that you hear and you're just like, Wow, like how did that all kind of fall into place?
Yeah.
Because, there's 35 years in between, like you just mentioned, Lisa, that you're 5 years in, Tilda, 40 years in. So like there's that huge gap,
Yes,
but you wrote
absolutely.
a book together. So I want to learn a little bit more about that and that process for both of you. Just kind of like gap in between, from the time Lisa started to the time that you were kind of
Right.
ending. And like you said, the book is called The Handover. Tell me about like how this kind of came to fruition. Maybe we'll
Well,
start with
I,
you, Tilda, and then Lisa.
yes. Well, I was at that conference. Actually, it came from the conference, and a number of students said, "Oh, you're writing another book, and what's the next book?" And and I hadn't really planned on writing another book. I just didn't have any particular idea. And one of the students, it was kind of funny that she said, "Why don't you do like the ABCs of nursing?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Do like A for anxiety because we're all feeling so anxious." Well, I get that, and then B for gosh, we're so burned out, and their students are burned out and bored. We've got periods of boredom, and C. Well, little did we know that soon C would be COVID because this meeting
Right.
of Lisa and me was right before COVID. Anyway, the idea kind of sparked my interest, and I sort of started to do that and go through the alphabet, which was kind of helpful in a way. It helped me remember certain stories and things I wanted to include. But everyone who read it, including Lisa, and Lisa was the most polite, but everyone who read it said, "You know how there's a books that you can't put down? Well, this one you can put down." It wasn't really. But then here I realized there was this whole story evolving right in front of my eyes, which was Lisa's evolution. And as I say, a few others that are part of the book, but Lisa's the main one. And here she is a student. She was in third year when I met her. COVID broke out a month later, and here she's going through that. I went through it too, but not like Lisa and others of her cohort did. I was sort of in the background in a clinic, whatever. And then watching Lisa graduate, watching her go through different things, her first job. Ultimately, she went on, did her master's, all within the 6-year period that the book takes place. So this was really the story. But I held on to the ABCs because it really helped me in a lot of ways. And I kind of kept throwing that in as a joke. But the real story was Lisa and becoming a nurse and me watching it and me saying, "Okay, you can't be a nurse forever. You can't be anything forever." I had to eventually leave, and I'm having a great retirement. But what helped me retire was to say to Lisa and these others, "This is a very valuable and beautiful thing, and what are you going to do with it?" And and trying to nurture them to love it like I do. And Lisa certainly does, and I know the problems that are out there. I know, I hear, I see, I experience some of it. I know how difficult it is, but I do think there are people who love nursing. And that's why I dedicated the book. We dedicated the book to those who stay, because despite all the problems, and there are plenty, burnout, so many things, we could just list them. And I'm sure you've talked at length about all of them on your show. I know you have. Despite that, those who stay and push through all those difficulties, it's worth it. I believe it's worth it. I've experienced its worth, and I know all those problems can be faced and dealt with, and you can still make a very satisfying career, and you can actually be a happy nurse. Lisa is, and I am, and even though we both have had our ups and downs in the profession, we stayed and we pushed through it all. And I just, and if you're serious enough about the profession and you do stay, I think this book is for you, but the profession is for you too.
I love that. What about you, Lisa? What are your thoughts?
I echo so much of what Tilda has shared. And I think the big piece for me coming in was so much of our curriculum and the mentality of my cohort was that fear of nurses eat their young. And we're going to be entering this profession of older, experienced nurses that were not going to be receptive, were not going to be welcoming, did not want to take us under their wing. And certainly a lot of us experienced it at a completely different level during the COVID pandemic, where everyone was just purely in survival mode. They did not have the extra 5 minutes to explain the theory that was behind the practice that we only had learned in simulation and textbooks. And now we were getting quite the salty dose of reality. And I think this is really what made me build more of a relationship with Tilda behind the scenes. Is I needed someone in those vulnerable moments to talk about the shifts, to talk about what it was that I was seeing, to process what it was that I was learning. I had some of those relationships with my professors and faculty, sure, but beyond my little university bubble, I didn't have a family member or a friend that could understand that I just put a person in the body bag and had to go to lecture that evening. And
Right.
that's where Tilda came in. It was such a unique, positive, therapeutic relationship where I was just writing emails and letters to her as a source of therapy. And bless Tilda for taking on that downloading. But it was such a beautiful gift that ended up happening is it documented this timeline of 6 years of my life of you hearing about terrible dates with drug dealers to scary shifts on the night shift to beautiful moments that have shaped who I am as a nurse and the patients that stay with you. And I think sometimes we as women and we as professionals don't have an outlet to be able to talk about those things. And Tilda gave me that safe space to be authentic and to be honest and to have some humor about it and maybe start the conversation in tears but end in laughter because she gave me that sounding board to be able to do so. And we together, in terms of our friendship, challenge that mentality that nurses eat their young and that these experienced healthcare providers don't want to have a relationship with the super green novice nurse. No, they are there. It's just challenging them to recognize that ability within themselves, but also challenging people of my generation to ask for help and to find those opportunities and to find those people in the room that could help them throughout their journey or even for a little part of it too.
Yeah, I really want to dig into what you mentioned about, this, nurses eating their young, this trope that we tend to see quite often and still hasn't really been eradicated from nursing as a profession. How did the two of you actively fight against this toxic dynamic while writing this book? And what did both of you have to unlearn about each other's generations in relation to nursing and bullying? Who wants to start first?
I'll go ahead. I loved
Right.
having that front row seat to Lisa's generation. Just love it. I think it's great in your life if you can have all the different generations in your life in somehow. I wanted to know what nursing is like for this generation. So I was always in a situation of wanting to listen and give feedback when I felt it was appropriate. But I know nursing is different for this generation. I know this generation is different. And of course it would be. So I was just learning about it and trying to find out what is true for Lisa's generation and for mine. There had to be some things, and I tried to identify some of those things in the book of what is true then and now and forevermore and transcends country and is universal about our profession. So I was trying always actually through the exploration of the ABCs to find those things. Was it A for attitude? Was it B for beds and bathing and the body, taking care of the body? Was it C for the whole compassion, curriculum? Because I kind of, compassion's a word we use a lot, but it only describes a small portion of what we do. And it really doesn't, for me, capture what we do. But anyway, I was trying to figure out what remains the same because above all, if I was going to write a book, it had to be relevant and speak to this generation. Who wants to read my nostalgic tales of what happened in the past? I didn't want it to be that.
What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I remember I was 22 years old. I had just completed my master's degree. I got hired at the hospital. I completed my 16 shifts of orientation on a 55-bed telemetry unit. And my very first solo shift, they made me charge a nurse on the night. And they're
What?
like, yep, you're the RN, you got the master's degree. Laugh about it now. And of course, you have the full patient assignment as well. And you're now balancing not only you're just got your feet wet, you're fairly novice in the world of nursing. Yes, you have
Right.
a master's degree, but okay, you have the experienced RPNs with you, you have the experienced RNs with you, and magically you've been bestowed this additional responsibility. And I think what gave me a bit of success is my humility and being able to form relationships with everyone around me through kindness and openness to feedback and being knowledgeable. And I think for my older, more experienced coworkers, showing them that I was capable and competent and hardworking and driven, earned me a really early respect. They saw how I could handle conflicts. They saw I could de-escalate situations. They noticed how I responded and cared for my patients. But in turn, when it came to the novice staff members, because magically I was senior staff already 16 shifts in, because we lost so many staff members with the pandemic, it was being the person I wish I had during my journey of the approachable, the kind, the positive, the role model in the room that they knew that they could turn to for help. And I
Right.
was so proud of creating that reputation and still having that reputation as a nurse within my practice. And I feel like I've been able to kind of create a really beautiful harmony on both ends of the spectrum. But that still doesn't mean that I don't deal with the bickering and the gossip of the younger generations, to the cannibalism and the eat their young mentality of the older generation. But it's just sometimes understanding where grit comes in. And through that, I'm able to talk to Tilda about it and strategize. I follow sometimes my gut instincts in those moments and sometimes lack of coffee to understand how I should respond to those moments too. I've had lots of moments where I've fallen on my face, but I've had lots of moments where I've rose above it. And I think that's something that's so beautiful about experience and time is I'm hoping to continue to form really great relationships and be true to myself and my values. But I now know if I get into some of those cannibalistic, mean mentality moments, I'm going to handle them a lot differently because I have experience and because I have these tools that Tilda has taught me formed through grit.
Yeah,
And
I think it's so amazing for you to share that vulnerability of even the fact that, sometimes we do fall on our face, and it's okay that, as we're learning, and even as time continues to go on, that we are humans and we will make mistakes, but it's about, like, what do we do in the moment after that, right? I think that's so important, that it's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to not just be like, oh, well, what could you have done differently? Or like your manager might say or whatever, but also just a time of reflection, right? I think that it's so important that we can recognize that within oneself. And I know for some people it's very hard that, because we're dealing with people's lives and the gravity all behind it, that if they feel like they were to make a mistake, they feel that the world's going to end. And of course, we know it's not. It's going to continue to go on, but recognizing that, okay, so now what do I do with this? How do I learn from this? Who else can I, have a conversation with to, continue on this journey of learning? Because again, I think that's a journey that we're all on. And you mentioned grit and gut. So I know in chapter 8 of your book, it's grit and gut. And of course, on this podcast, we talk a lot about grit. And you mentioned some of the challenges that you were seeing as, a learner, as someone who was kind of 16 shifts in, thrown in it like into a hot mess, I'd say. But you also discussed navigating that moral distress of understanding and of understaffing and clinical trauma. When clinical systems are falling apart, and we're seeing so much more of that right now, where's the boundary between having grit and realizing that you might be or are being exploited? We'll start with you, Lisa, and then Tilda. I'd like to hear your perspective.
a really good question. I think this is something where my girlfriends and I, we have a really cute group that we call each other the survivors. And we go for breakfast and things once a month, and it turns very quickly into a therapy session. But something that my friends and I often talk about is what makes a high quality nurse and what is that defined as, and really challenging some of these conversations and narratives that we sometimes see about short staffing, the wait lines that are happening currently in our waiting rooms for people to see physicians, the shortages of family physicians occurring, the errors, the misdiagnoses, the supposed neglect as well. Like all of these are very big, relevant titles and headlines that you see on a lot of news sources and social media. And I just wish there was greater emphasis on the good that nurses and healthcare providers also do despite these circumstances. And I really think if there was a change, it might not sell as many newspapers, but I do think it could really change how nurses are heard and listened to when it comes to these conversations. I find sometimes If people are only focusing on the negative, it's a bit of a, oh, here they go again. Meanwhile, if we come to the table with, this is all the good that our profession is doing despite these following things, and we need your help, it might change the direction of that conversation even more so. I'm going in for another shift this week, which I'm very excited about. But my colleagues and I will say to you, even if we're working short, if we have the A team going, we know we're going to have a great shift. We work in each other's shadows. We can read each other's facial expressions, regardless of how much PPE we're wearing. We can call the physician and we say our name and they go, oh, thank God you're working a shift today. Like, we have a beautiful rhythm. We're a well conducted symphony when you really think about it. But where the topic of short staffing comes in is they see this from a numerical standpoint of ratios from patients to nurses, which, yes, is a problem. But if we have healthcare providers that don't care, if we have healthcare providers that maybe have knowledge gaps or have a lack of mentorship opportunities, resources available to them, and opportunities for investments in the areas where they potentially have deficits, we're potentially throwing more people into the room, but more people that potentially could be creating a bigger mess rather than actually creating a solution. And I sometimes wish that's where we could have a conversation as a profession, is how can we retain, but also how can we uplift to create skills such as grit and resilience and those intangible humanistic skills that create a fantastic nurse.
Tilda, over to you. What are your
Wow.
thoughts?
Well, Lisa covered a lot of things. And as I was listening to Lisa, well, first of all, I was praising myself for having chosen so well. But no, but as I was listening to each and everything she mentioned, overstaffing and the A team and coming into work and knowing you can cope. I mean, there were just so many things she mentioned in passing, because of course we have a limited time here. I thought, wow, each of those things is a story. Each of those things. And I guess it's what I'm currently very interested now in, is mentoring nurses, not so much in nursing because I'm not in it right now, but it's mentoring nurses to tell their stories. And this is a whole other thing I'm developing. I'm happy to talk with you about it another time, Amie, but I'm going to be launching a course in the fall specifically for nurses to tell their stories. Lisa started off by talking about documenting the good things that are happening, having an amazing team, stuff that goes on a night shift, and how you can talk to a doctor with a lot of self-respect and have a good communication going in there. And so many things that Lisa mentioned, I thought, wow, this is a story. That's a story. This is a story. And nurses are experiencing all those things, but some maybe want to write this. And if they do, I can show them how. And I'm very excited to do that in my new career as a writing teacher.
Yeah, I think back to what both of you had said, right? In terms of seeing that, when we hear stories, we tend, again, this is how news works, that we tend to hear the stories that are sensationalized or the stories that will catch a headline. But again, at the end of the day, I have to say to both of you, if we don't tell the stories, then no one's going to hear them.
Or
And I think
others will tell them
that's
for
where,
us and they won't get it right.
and they won't get it right. Or,
No.
other people will pick up on stories and will tell them for nurses. And again,
Sure.
this is where I've
And
said
an
time and time
ordinary
again.
shift is full of stories. You don't have to look for, The Pit is a great show, but you don't have to have that kind of, wild pyrotechnics happening, although they do happen, of course. But there are simple moments, and they're so interesting, of conversation between a doctor and a nurse, conversation between a nurse and a patient, conversations between nurses. So interesting. And there's stories happening all the time. And I just loved how Lisa and all that she said reminded me of so many stories that are begging to be told, that we just don't. We're afraid. We don't know how to get started. All those things can be addressed.
Yes. And again, I would also say that two truths can be true, right? Yes, we do have amazing stories. And like, for example, I've worked in teams where it's the dream team. You are ready to go to work and you know that the people that you come in with are going to be supportive. But on the flip side, we do have those instances where people aren't in supportive teams, or they've been in a toxic working relationship. So again, I always have to put that out there that yes, two things can be true at the same
Yeah.
time, where
So
you might
true.
have a wonderful team, but someone might be not experiencing that. And how do we kind of work with systems that have such really night and day kind of situations, and how do we make sure that everybody gets to have a team that's worth working in? And I think that's something that we as nurses are the ones that have to work towards that. I don't think anybody else can fix that except for us.
Definitely.
I want to talk about the ultimate handover, and maybe before that, just something a little bit fun, because I'm keeping track of time. Maybe we'll start with you, Lisa. What was your favorite chapter to write?
Oh, it's a hard one.
I think I know what it is. You go ahead, Lisa.
For me, I really loved UIFFM. Like, what's in it for me? Like that one, like I found myself like having to go away from the keyboard for a bit and like having like a little bit of some emotional moments, being able to talk about those patients that really stood out early in my career, and having that reminder on that Portugal trip I took to do it for her. It's something that sticks with me. It's something that I hold on to. And I don't think it was fun to write. It was certainly therapeutic. And this is one of the most beautiful parts about writing this book is it's so vulnerable. You hear about dates that have gone wrong, to being violently attacked in the workplace, to failing the NCLEX, to stressful shifts. There's so many moments where you see what I lovingly call my character development across all 18 chapters. And to now receive text messages, emails, phone calls, DMs, letters from people that are reading these chapters, and especially that what's in it for me segment seems to be the one that a lot of people are writing and are sharing the stories of the patients that they hold on to. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of. It's something that I really hope that patient is looking down on me and going, just thank you for sharing my story. And it's a gift. It's an absolute gift to have that chapter publicized.
Yeah, amazing. What about you, Tilda?
Oh, which chapter was the most fun to write? Oh,
Which
gosh.
was your favorite chapter to write?
Well, I knew Lisa was going to choose that one because it really was. Well, first of all, you get to W. As I told you, I was very loyal to this alphabet thing.
It's a
I
double.
had to see it through. I just had to see it through. And to get to W, what are you going to do? So I developed this acronym, what's in it for me, because I know that sounds like, crass to say what's in for me. It has to be something in it for you to do this work, any work you do.
Right.
There's no salary that's going to be enough for the kind of things we do. And it's not,
Right.
that can't be your only reason. And if it is, it will show in your work for sure. So you have to find some reasons why you're doing this, because it has meaning for you, or because you believe in it. It's your faith-based reason, perhaps. And Lisa comes up with a number of reasons, and I come up with mine, but they're very different than Lisa's because, well, we're very different in many ways. And it wasn't even, there were certain patients, but it was also certain learning moments for me. It was certain relationships with other nurses, perhaps, there were different things. So we came up with a bunch of different things. We actually tried to list, why am I doing this? Why would someone do it? It's so hard. We know how hard it is. Why? You have to have a reason. It will keep you going in those difficult moments if you have your reasons.
Yeah,
100%.
I agree with you, Tilda, and I agree with you too, Lisa. Like, I think about all the reasons why I stayed into nursing, and again, it was always the patient, right? Like, it was always that relationship as a labor and delivery nurse of being there for for such an important moment, whether it was a birth, whether it was a stillborn. It didn't really. I shouldn't say it didn't matter, but it was just to be able to be honored, to be in the room either which way it swung. And it was such a passion for me, and that's why I still stick to women's health to this day, that I just feel it's so important to be able to be in that space. And I think women and women's bodies are amazing.
Yeah.
And right? Absolutely. And I just think, when I think about what's in it for me, that's definitely it, right? If I can help a woman transition in this way from, giving birth or whatever the case may be, I just felt that it was such a beautiful space for me to be in. And hearing that cry, or, that gentle touch to say that, it's, it was a pleasure to be your nurse. I think that makes it all worthwhile.
These are the
So
stories
Tilda.
you don't hear enough of, Amie. I appreciate both of you
True.
highlighting all
Yeah,
the wonderful things that we just don't write about them. We just
we
write these down,
don't.
skip them out. We don't talk about them. I mean, we have reason to complain for sure, but we've got to move on from complaint at some point. And otherwise, why if we have so much complaints, why are we doing it? It begs the
Right.
question: why are we doing it? There has to
Well,
be a reason.
the complaints have to turn into action, right? It can't just be a
Exactly.
complaint. We gotta we
You're
gotta
right.
we gotta do something with it.
Yeah.
So, Tilda, this was framed as your last shift, the ultimate handover of a professional universal values to the next generation. That's you, Lisa. If there's one piece of clinical wisdom or systemic armor that you want Lisa's generation to fiercely protect as they inherit this broken healthcare system, what
Uh-huh.
would you say that is? And then on the flip side, Lisa, what is one thing that you learned from Tilda that you think that your generation should hold on to?
It's really hard to distill it all down. It does for me think part of this idea that the dedication to stay and learn the lessons of this profession, because it will benefit you in every aspect of your life. Your knowledge and skill will help you in you need it in your profession, but it will help you in your personal life too. So stay despite it all, despite how difficult it is. And you can stay if you know your reasons. That is the thing that we just talked about. If you know and stay true to your reasons. But I just want to add one other thing on top of that is that you've got to find a way to have fun. If you are not having fun, if you are not enjoying your work,
I
you've got to
agree.
make a change. You've got to move. You've got to do something. Don't just leave. I mean, try to stay. I really believe in staying and working through things, but you've got to have fun. If you're not having fun, you're not enjoying your work, don't do it.
I
Don't.
agree.
You can make it fun. If you are in a workplace that is not fun, and most workplaces are not these days, I had a lot of fun in the past. You'll read about all my fun if you read the book, but I find a lot of workplaces are just very serious places, very no mirth, no fun, no play. There are a lot of restrictions on ourselves, and I just think you got to find the fun. So you make the fun, find fun people, and have that fun, the jokes and the banter and the teasing sometimes, and just to enjoy your work with people and help each other. So you have fun. You've got to have fun and enjoy the work.
Well, that's why I work nights.
Yeah, there is more fun on nights, I have to say.
Yes, Lisa, to you.
It was so wonderful. We had an experience at the UHN for a book launch, and so many of Laura's line, for those that have read A Nurse's Story, come to this event to support Tilda and I. And we were eating our little charcuterie, we had our little punch, we were going around the room, and every single one of them had the same statement. We had so much fun together. And I think that is something that I genuinely hope readers, as well as my generation, take from Tilda's is the pursuit of happiness and finding fulfillment and joy and a reward in choosing this beautiful profession that is to be a nurse. There is so much good within nursing. There is so much hope and happiness and humor. And I wish we were more associated with other adjectives than compassion, because
Yeah, we're much more than that.
there are so much more than that. Sometimes the best comedians I know are at 3 o'clock in the morning on a night shift when you're a little bit delirious and you're creating some of the best humor. But I think this is what I strive to do in my professional career, is not only have those moments of reflection of what am I getting out of this? Like, what is making me truly happy in this role? But rather than leaving in fear because I have a lack of fulfillment, but challenging myself to find something else, because the opportunities are endless in nursing, to find something again that brings me joy. And what is it in a place where I can find happiness and fulfillment and decent pay? Little ingredients that make for a really successful, fulfilling career. And I hope that is genuinely what I will get to be able to say 40 years from now, is I had in every single chapter and journey of my professional life one that was happy and joyful and fulfilling.
Yeah, I think that both of you echo principles and values that I admire in nursing, and I think that a lot of what what we see is the lack of people not being happy, not finding that joy, feeling a sense of, crushing weight and pressure because of all the various different challenges that we see. And I think that it is important that we find fun. Like, I mean, I think, I don't know if I had mentioned this before, but I might have mentioned it to you, Tilda. So, like, my dad died in March. And one of the things that he wanted so much for himself was just to live, right? Just to enjoy, whether it's smelling another rose, whether it's, one extra walk. And I think sometimes we waste so much time on the small things, or not enough time, I'd say, on the small things. And I think that, our time is so short here. Why not have a little bit of fun?
Definitely.
And get it,
Definitely.
and definitely for me to get into some good trouble.
Yes, I'm hoping you will, Amie. You are. Good
But
trouble.
with that, is there anything that we didn't touch on? I know we could probably keep talking, but maybe any last words for any of the listeners out there, or just maybe even some words of encouragement for a nurse that might be saying, I don't think nursing's for me. Let's start with you, Tilda, and last words for you, Lisa.
Geez, nothing comes to mind. Sorry, Amie.
It's okay.
The nurse who says it might not be for him or her, well, that's a possibility. Nursing
That's
might
true.
not be for that person, but let's hope that that person can find a way. Because as Lisa said, there are so many ways of being a nurse in so many areas, specialties. Just so many things you can do. I think it just comes back to appreciating this gift of this profession and focusing on all the gift that it is, and trying to find solutions to the problems. And we know the problems. And I'm very excited about Lisa and what she's doing. And I feel very comforted by knowing that you, Amie, are doing the work you're doing, real, true leadership in our profession. And I just want to see you at the top of nursing in Canada, because you have what it takes. You really do. And I'm just so impressed with all that you're doing. And I'm very comforted by it too, because I know that the handover is going in the right place with the both of you and many young nurses I meet. So very exciting for me.
Thank you. Thank you. And Lisa.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think I've had the privilege of teaching over 500 nursing students, and all of them have that same twinkle in their eye of hope and wanting to make a positive change in the world and changing our healthcare profession. And they're movers, they're shakers, they're change makers. And I think to those that are listening, know that you have an abundance of healthcare providers that are so excited to hear these ideas, that are wanting to be a part of that change with you, and that what's happening in our healthcare system will change for the better. Just they're going to be a part of that wonderful change that will occur. But find those people that want to support you and uplift you and mentor you, and find those safe people and places that you can have a sounding block and send an email to, and know that the three of us on this podcast today would be very happy to receive an email. It might just change your life. You never know. You
Absolutely.
might find us at a conference, and that one conversation could completely transform who you are. So put yourself out there, find those people that are meant to maybe change your destiny, and know that there's many people out there that genuinely want the best for you. So I'm very excited to receive more of those emails and phone calls. And I'm just so grateful, Amie, truly, for this opportunity to talk about our handover. Tilda has changed my life, and I know this podcast is changing a lot of people's lives too with the outreach it's doing. Well done, truly. Thank you.
Well done to both of you as well. And I mean, I think that this is what we need, right, within our profession, that when we have, nurses telling their stories, sharing knowledge. I don't think we should ever gatekeep. I think that, if we have something that we can share, that we should share it. And I think that you two have done that so beautifully. So I want to thank both of you for coming on the Greeners podcast to talk about your book, The Handover. Again, where can people find your books and find both of you?
Well, I'm Tilda at Nurse Tilda, and I love hearing from people. You can write to me directly. I still use email, but all the other social platforms are available. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Ask questions if I can answer, if I can respond. Please do. Where can they find the book? Wherever books are sold. It's definitely
Excellent.
it's published by the University of Toronto Press, but it's certainly in bookstores and available everywhere.
Excellent. And what about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm Lisa Mochrie. You can find me on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Any social media platform.
Yes, which is fantastic. And as Tilda says, anywhere where you can go to find a book, and a library where you can go to find a book, and Kindle, you can find us as well.
Yeah,
so thank
sure.
you so much for your support with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure that I drop all the links in the show notes so people can find both of you and find all of your books, Tilda,
Hey,
and your
Amie,
book,
in our book, there's a
Handover.
shout out about your book, about the wisdom of nurses. It's in our book too. It was part of our inspiration. We
Yes,
didn't know if
we
we'd ever get
definitely
to
need to
meet
have
you.
like a nurse author get together type of thing. Like, I think that there are so many amazing nurse authors and we don't celebrate them nearly enough in our profession. So that's a whole other conversation that we need to have. For sure. But yeah, thank you both for coming on the Green Nurse podcast. It was an amazing opportunity to speak to both of you, and we definitely have to stay in touch.
We will.
Thank you again.
You're most welcome.
Bye.
Looking for a great gift for a nurse or someone who needs to learn about nursing? Check out my national best-selling book, The Wisdom of Nurses: Stories of Grit from the Bedside. Thank you so much for listening to The Gritty Nurse with Amie Archibald-Varley. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on any awesome episodes from The Gritty Nurse. Thank you so much, and stay tuned until next time. Stay gritty.